The screaming started again 20 minutes ago.
Bismillah. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim.
Ya Allah.
Ya Allah, my hand.
Ibrahim. They'd taken him somewhere above and brought him back. I heard the dragging, the guards laughing, a body hitting stone.
Fatima.
His wife's name. His son's name. Allah's name. The only things he had left.
La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
Yusuf.
My boy. Bismillah.
Then quiet. The screaming stopped. The praying stopped. I sat with my back against the stone and my ribs doing the hot wire thing, and I couldn't do shit for him. I couldn't reach him. I couldn't see him. I could sit here and listen to a man break through a wall. The crack on the other side. The gap in the mortar where the stone had crumbled. I'd been looking through it since the first night, pressing my face against it because the cell next door had something on its walls that I couldn't stop looking at. Charcoal. Floor to ceiling. Every surface. And it wasn't scratching. It wasn't a man losing his mind. It was equations, star charts, geometric progressions that spiraled from one wall to the next. I'd built models on this architecture years ago. Different life. And here it was on a dungeon wall 1,000 years before it was supposed to exist. I pressed my mouth to the crack. Hey, the equations on your wall. The third sequence. The harmonic ratios. You've got a recursive pattern in there, but the interval narrows at the fourth iteration. That's not decay. That's compression. Silence.
You can see them?
Yeah, I can see them.
No one has... I wrote them, and I can't. The shapes come, but I can't hold them still.
You wrote them, but you can't read them back.
Everything at once. All of it. Every layer. Like drowning.
Okay, I can help with that. Before and after. This, then that. That's all I'm good at.
You can hear me. You can actually hear me.
I started reading, one sequence at a time. This first cluster, you've mapped something orbital, but you're using intervals instead of distances. The spaces between things instead of the things themselves.
The spaces between. Yes.
And this second sequence. It repeats at every scale, one inside the other, inside the other.
7 layers. Each one nested.
Each sentence cost him, but they were getting longer. And the thing that kept nagging me, since the portal, since whatever the light did to me when I came through, I don't just read patterns, they refactor. I'll see something in one domain, and the same structure shows up in a completely different domain, wearing different clothes. I can't turn it off. I look at his astronomy and I see data architecture. I look at his geometry and I see compression algorithms. Same bones, different skin. I don't know what that makes me. Some days I think the portal turned a dial past where the dial is supposed to go. Some days I think something broke, and the breaking just looks like an upgrade from the inside. How did you write these? Where did this come from?
I didn't learn it. It came. When I went west, to the shimmer, something looked at me, and then everything was there, all at once. And I can't make it stop.
Something looked at him, at the shimmer, and then he could see all of it but couldn't sort any of it. An overfit model. Too much signal, no filter. And I was the filter. Sitting in the next cell, reading his noise into signal through a crack in a wall. He got clearer, sentence by sentence, the static fading. And then he said something.
The weaver, Ibrahim, the man on the other side of my wall. His hand.
What about his hand?
I can hear his bones. They're wrong. Tell him to put his hand against the wall, between his cell and mine, flat against the stone.
20 minutes ago, this man couldn't finish a sentence. I turned to the other wall. Ibrahim. The man behind your wall. He says, put your broken hand against the stone. Flat.
What?
I know. Just do it. Silence. Shuffling. A whimper. 5 seconds. 10.
My hand. The bones. They're straight.
I heard him flexing his fingers. Opening. Closing.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
Hands don't do that. I looked back through the crack. At the equations. At whatever was on the other side of that wall. Later, Ibrahim's voice, steadier now.
The equations. On his wall. I can see them through a crack near the floor. The harmonic relationship between the inner and outer planets. I've been working on this for 3 years. He solved it.
2 men looking at the same wall from opposite sides. Ibrahim seeing the astronomy, the stars, the instruments he could build. Me seeing the systems, the structures, the things I used to build in a different life. Same wall, same fire. 2 different things to do with it.
I'm memorizing everything I can see.
He didn't need to explain. A man with healed hands was memorizing the future through a hole in a wall. And the man who gave it to him couldn't read his own writing until I put it in order. None of us had any idea what we just started.
They unlocked my chains from the wall, kept the irons on my wrists, and dragged me up. Through corridors, upstairs, into a room with torches and tables and instruments hanging from the walls that I recognized from a dozen centuries. And a man I hadn't met yet. He had soft hands. That was the first thing I noticed. The hands of a man who had never held a sword or pulled a plow. Beautiful hands. His eyes were worse. Kind eyes. Warm eyes. The most beautiful eyes I'd ever seen on a man. The eyes of someone who would help a stranger. He'd been working on me for 3 hours. Methodical. Patient. I'd known men like him in every century. They found their way to these rooms the way water finds cracks. The title changed. The hands never did.
You know what fascinates me about pain, stranger?
Enlighten me.
It's honest. People lie with their mouths, their eyes, their bodies. But pain strips all that away. Pain is the only truth we have left.
He drove something sharp into the meat of my shoulder. I felt it scrape bone. I didn't scream.
When a man is in enough pain, he stops performing. He becomes authentic. That's what I do, stranger. I find the authentic.
Philosophical.
Most men would be begging by now. But you just take it. Why?
Practice.
I have another guest. A prince. He's been with me for 18 months. I've broken every bone in his hands. Twice. Done things that would kill most men. And he just survives. Heals. Comes back.
Sounds like you're losing your touch.
Oh no. He feels everything. I can see it. He just doesn't break.
He walked to the wall, ran his fingers over something hanging there. A frame, straps and hooks.
But what I really dream about, flaying. I did it once, only once. A thief, nobody important. 3 hours, peeling back the skin inch by inch. It was the greatest joy of my life.
The dreamy look left. Something calculating replaced it.
I can't do that to you. Not yet. But the weaver, Ibrahim, the man who sheltered you.
What about him?
He has no value. No family with money. No one who would ask questions. Tomorrow morning, starting at the shoulders, I think I can keep a man conscious through the entire process now.
You want to play monster, Kassim? A monster you'll get.
I like you, stranger. Take him back to his cell.
They dragged me out. Ribs cracked, shoulder wrong. Kassim thought he was the monster in this room. Back in the cell, chains on the wall, the dark.
You heard his name.
Yeah, I heard it.
Ibrahim. Al-Qurtubi. You know who he is.
Yeah.
Then why didn't you kill him?
It doesn't make sense. The age is wrong. He's too young. He's a brass worker with an apprentice. He's not...
Not what? Not the man whose work you were sent to unmake. Not the father of the line you crossed 1,000 years to end.
The timeline doesn't match. If he's who the name says he is, he should be older. Or younger. Or not here. Something shifted.
The portals. The doorways. Every time one opens, reality rewrites. Threads move. Names stay, but the people wearing them change.
So he might not be the one.
Or he might be exactly the one. Just wearing a different version of the life.
Quiet. The chains. The dark. Ibrahim's prayers coming through the wall. Soft. Steady.
You could have done it in the first days, when he was sleeping.
He sheltered me.
Sentiment.
Hospitality. Your law, not mine. He opened his door. He fed me. He called me cousin to soldiers who would have killed us both. His household is under protection.
My rules. And you've never cared about my rules before.
He has a boy, Yusuf, 12 years old. Picks up numbers the way birds pick up seeds. And tomorrow, the man with the soft hands is going to strap Ibrahim to a frame and start at the shoulders.
So what are you going to do about it?
The dog is getting me the blade.
I was reading the 5th sequence when I heard a sound. Small. A sound from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. The sound a dog makes when he wants you to know he's back. Santino?
He crawled to the bars. His hands came through, found my ears, my face, my neck. His fingers were shaking.
Santino. Santino. Oh, God.
I pushed my face into his hands. His palms were raw. His fingers smelled like blood and iron and charcoal. I licked them.
I held his face between my hands, through the bars, not talking, my forehead against the iron. I thought he was dead. I didn't know where the dog was. I didn't know if Yusuf was alive. And now he was here. Warm. Real. Okay. You're here. You're alive. Yusuf? Nod.
Ibrahim's family?
Nod. I held the dog. I don't know how long.
The wheel dog.
You know him?
He landed with me. Been with the Weaver's boy since the arrest. The dog understands you. Everything.
He went through the same thing I did. The light changed him.
Then he can carry a message. There's a scalpel hidden in my boot. Guard room above. The dog can get in. Small. Quiet.
And then what?
Then I have a scalpel. And a scalpel is a key that opens everything.
The guard room. His boots. The blade is in the heel. Can you do it? Nod. Be careful. Please. He licked my nose. Once. Then he turned.
Through the corridor, past the room that smelled like old blood, past the rotted door, into the garden. The garden had been beautiful once. You could still see it in the bones. The fountains, dry now. The statues with their faces knocked off. Jasmine gone wild over everything. Thick and sweet and wrong, because nothing that smells this good should be growing over a place where people scream. Moonlight. Silver on everything. My wheels left tracks in the dead grass. I stopped, looked back at the tracks. 2 thin lines in the silver. A trail leading from the drainage grate to the dungeon door. If anyone walked through this garden and looked down, they'd see exactly where something small on wheels had gone. I couldn't fix that. I filed it, kept moving. The guard room was above. I could hear them through the stone. Voices, laughter, the sound of cups on wood and dice on a table. 4 voices, 3 active, 1 snoring. The smell of wine and leather and oiled steel coming down the stairwell like a warning. The stairs were the problem. Narrow, stone, steep. My wheels were built for flat ground, for the apartment in Lisbon, for the sidewalks along the Tagus where Antonio used to take me before the sun came up. They weren't built for medieval staircases. I took the first step. Front legs pulling, rear wheels catching the lip of the stone. A scrape, loud in the corridor. I stopped, listened. Above, the laughter continued. Someone was arguing about a dice throw. Someone else was calling him a cheat. Second step. Third. My harness creaked. The brass fittings clicked against the stone, and I adjusted my weight forward to keep the wheels from bouncing. Something I'd learned in the first week with the harness, back in Lisbon. Antonio had spent 3 days filing the joints so they'd be quieter. He'd sat on the kitchen floor with a metal file and a headlamp, working on my wheels while I ate kibble and watched him. Fourth step. Fifth. At the top, a door, cracked open, torchlight spilling through the gap in a warm orange line across the stone. I pressed my eye to the gap. 4 guards, 3 at the table, 1 asleep on a bench along the near wall, his leg hanging off the edge, his foot at floor level. The table was between me and the far wall, and the far wall had the shelf. Weapons, belts, boots piled in the careless way soldiers pile things when they don't care about other people's belongings. 3 table legs and a sleeping man's foot between me and the boots. The 3 awake guards were facing each other across the table, arguing. Loud. One of them had his back fully turned to the door. The other 2 were focused on the dice and on each other's faces, the way men focus when money is involved and trust is not. Since the portal, since whatever the light did to all of us, I noticed things about people that I didn't notice before. Not just smells, not just sounds. Patterns. The way a man's breathing changes a half second before he moves. The way attention has a direction you can feel, like heat from a fire. Right now, the attention in that room was pointed inward, at the table, at the game. The door behind them was dead space. They'd forgotten it existed. I pushed through. Low. Slow. Under the first bench. The sleeping guard's leg was 3 inches from my ear. I could smell the wine on his breath and the sour sweat in his boot, and the fact that he'd eaten lamb for dinner. His breathing was deep and steady, but there was a hitch in it every 4th breath, a half snore that meant he was close to the surface. I waited for the hitch. Counted. 1, 2, 3. Hitch. I moved on the hitch, when the snore covered the sound of my wheels on the stone. Under the table, between boots, into the shadow under the bench on the far side. One of the guards shifted. His boot came down 2 inches from my nose. I stopped breathing. The boot stayed. He laughed at something, picked it up, crossed his legs. The shelf. Close now. The boots were piled with belts and sword sheaths and things the guards had taken off prisoners and never catalogued, because nobody cares about a prisoner's boots in a city that's falling apart. I could smell the leather, a dozen different leathers, but underneath one that was different from the others. Not this century's leather, something from another place. And underneath that leather, metal, clean, old. A scent like cold iron and river stones, and something else that I didn't have a name for, but that made the hair on my spine stand up. I found the boot, Silas's boot. Black, strange stitching. The heel was thicker than the others, a seam where there shouldn't be one. I took the heel in my teeth, pulled. It didn't give. I braced my back legs against the wall, dug my front claws into the stone, and pulled harder. My harness creaked, the brass clicked. The sleeping guard's breathing changed. The hitch came early. He shifted on the bench. I froze, my teeth on the boot heel, my whole body locked. 3 seconds. 5. 7. He settled. The breathing went deep again. I pulled. The heel popped loose. And there it was. Small. Silver. Folded into the hollow like something that had been waiting. The scalpel. I took it in my mouth. Careful. The blade was sharp enough that I could feel the edge through my gums. One wrong angle and it would cut me, and the blood would drip onto the floor, and the smell of fresh blood in a room full of soldiers would end this very quickly. I held it flat, between my teeth, tongue pressed against the flat of the blade to keep it from shifting, the way I used to carry Antonio's slippers from the bedroom to the couch on mornings when his hip was bad and he couldn't bend down. Same grip, different cargo. Back under the bench, under the table, past the sleeping guard. I timed the hitch, moved on the snore, through the door. Nobody looked down. Down the stairs, through the corridor, the scalpel cold between my teeth, the taste of metal and something older than metal. Silas's cell, at the end of the corridor. Darker here, no torches. I pressed my nose through the bars. He was sitting against the far wall, in the dark. I could see his eyes. They caught the faint light from somewhere and gave it back.
Well, I'll be damned.
I laid the scalpel on the stone floor, pushed it through the gap under the bars with my nose. The metal scraped against stone, a small sound, and his fingers found it. Long fingers, steady. They closed around the handle, and the scalpel disappeared into his hand like it had come home.
Good dog.
I looked at him for a moment. The man in the dark with the blade. The man Antonio's plan depended on. The man who scared me in a way I couldn't explain, because I'd met dangerous people before. Antonio's uncle had been dangerous. The men in the Alfama had been dangerous. But this was different. This was a man who was dangerous the way gravity is dangerous. Not because he tried, because he couldn't stop. I turned. Back through the corridor, through the garden, through the grate, into the night air. Yusuf was crouched by the outer wall, his knees drawn up, his eyes too wide for a 12-year-old.
Did you do it?
Nod.
Good. Good boy.
We sat together in the dark, the boy and the dog. Behind us, inside the palace walls, a man had a blade. Above us, the drums from the city walls were getting louder. And somewhere in the corridors between, Antonio was being walked out of the only place I knew where to find him. I didn't know that yet. I wouldn't know it until later. All I knew was the drums and the boy's breathing and the taste of the blade still on my tongue and the feeling that something had started that couldn't be stopped.
I was back at the crack when the footsteps came. Military boots. One man. Moving with the kind of silence that doesn't come from trying to be quiet. It comes from knowing you don't need to be loud. The dungeon guard heard him, stepped into the corridor with his hand on his sword, started saying something about custody transfer, authorization, the vizier's seal.
Through the veins of the Sakaliba flows 100 years of violence refined into purpose. I am the tip of that refinement. Step aside, or learn what the tip does.
The guard looked at the officer. The officer didn't blink. The guard stepped aside. The officer unlocked my cell. His hand closed on my arm. Not rough, not gentle, functional. The grip of a man who moves prisoners the way a carpenter moves lumber. We walked. Ibrahim's cell. He was sitting against the wall, both hands in his lap, flexing his fingers, opening and closing them with the slow wonder of a man who just got something back that he thought was gone forever. He looked up at me as I passed. Our eyes met. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. Silas's cell. He was sitting with his back against the stone, legs stretched out, head tilted back. He saw me through the bars, lifted his hand, just barely. A wave that was almost a salute, like he was saying, "Noted. I see you leaving. I'll deal with it." Sebastian's cell. He was at his wall, charcoal in his healed hand, writing, adding to the equations. He didn't look up. He was somewhere else. Somewhere the math was still pouring in, and he was catching it while the filter I'd given him was still working. The giant was at the gate at the end of the corridor, standing with two of the vizier's men. He watched the Sakaliba officer walk past him with me in tow and said nothing. Those two wide shoulders filling the doorframe, those small eyes tracking us the way a dog tracks a bone it can't reach. They took me outside. Night air. Cold. The sky burnt copper from the fires in the merchant quarter, and in the courtyard, an army. Horses stamping, wagons loaded, 200 Sakaliba soldiers in formation, armored, mounted, and silent in the way that only soldiers who've been told something bad are silent. And in the middle of it all, on a gray horse, the man who'd tried to have me executed at the proceeding.
The scalpel was warm in my hand. It was always warm. The metal remembered the cave it came from, the heat of the stone it was forged in. The warmth wasn't ambient, it was specific. A temperature that came from somewhere else. From above, sounds were changing. What had been distant drums for the last hour was now something closer and more complicated. Horns. A rhythm to the shouting that meant coordination, not chaos. The stone walls carried it down in waves, distorted but readable if you'd heard enough sieges. And I'd heard enough sieges.
The Berbers. They're at the gates. Can you hear it? That's not a probe. That's an assault.
I hear it.
The guards up there are being pulled. Every man who can carry a weapon is going to the walls. The dungeon is down to maybe 2 men and the giant. If you're going to use that blade, this is the moment. There won't be a better one.
He was right. I'd been counting guard rotations for 3 days. 8 men on the regular rotation. 2 down here at all times, the rest above. But the drums had been pulling them since midnight. I'd heard the footsteps thinning overhead. The corridors above emptying. The palace hemorrhaging soldiers toward the walls. I looked at the scalpel. Turned it in my fingers. Felt the balance of it. An old friend. The only thing in any century that had never disappointed me. 1 inch, nothing more. You pull back when I say.
1 inch won't be enough for the giant, Silas. You know that. You've seen him. He put you on the floor 3 days ago, and you had working ribs and 2 good shoulders then.
1 inch to start. We renegotiate if I'm dying.
You're always dying. You just don't stay dead. That's the whole arrangement. Fine, 1 inch. But I want it on the record that you're being stubborn about this.
Noted. I opened the door. Not wide, a crack. And through the crack, something poured into my arms, my legs, my spine, the base of my skull. Not heat, not cold. Potential. The feeling of a spring being released 1 notch. Like standing up after you've been sitting for so long your legs forgot they could carry you. And suddenly, they remember. My ribs stopped hurting. Not healed, stabilized. The grinding sensation in my shoulder joint smoothed out as something in there slid back to where it was supposed to be. A click I felt in my teeth. My hands stopped shaking. The chains on my wrists were bolted to the wall with iron pins driven 6 inches into the stone. I'd tested them every night for 3 nights, applied pressure at different angles, mapped the weak points. The mortar around the upper pin on the left side had a hairline crack that flexed when I pulled at the right angle. The lower pin on the right side was slightly bent from a previous prisoner who'd tried and failed. I wrapped the chains around both hands, set my feet flat against the wall at hip height, and pulled. A steady, sustained pull, not yanking, loading, the way you pull a tooth. Constant pressure until something gives. The upper pin came first, a groan from the mortar, a crack. Then the iron sliding free with a sound like a nail being pulled from wet wood. The lower pin followed, the bend in it acting as a lever, and the chain dropped to the floor with a sound that carried down the corridor like a church bell. The first guard heard it. He was 10 yards down the corridor, sitting on a stool by the torch bracket, half asleep. He stood up fast, hand going to his sword, and turned toward my cell with the unfocused eyes of a man who wasn't expecting to see his prisoner standing in the doorway without chains. I covered the 10 yards before his sword cleared the scabbard. The scalpel is not a fighting blade. It's 4 inches long and designed for precision, not combat. But 4 inches is plenty if you know where the gaps in chainmail are, and I've had a long time to study where the gaps are. Inside the wrist, where the mail rides up when the arm extends. The scalpel went in and came out, and the guard's hand opened and the sword clattered to the floor, and he followed it down with his other hand clamped to his wrist, and a look on his face like he just remembered something important that he should have done differently. The second guard was around the corner, better, faster, already drawn. He came at me with purpose, and I respected that, the way you respect anything that's trying to kill you competently. He swung low, going for my legs, which told me someone had trained him to fight men who were faster than him. Smart. Wrong night. I stepped over the blade, put my shoulder into his chest, and drove him back into the wall. The scalpel found the gap under his arm. He made a sound like a man who has just realized that the pain in his side is more than a bruise, and his legs went loose, and I lowered him to the floor, because there was no reason to let him fall hard. He was just a man doing a job. The wrong job on the wrong night, but still. The giant was at the gate. I'd been thinking about the giant for 3 days, watching him through the bars when they dragged me past, mapping him the way I mapped the chains. His stance, his weight distribution, the way he favored his left leg when he stood for long periods, suggesting an old injury in the right knee. The way his 2 wide shoulders made his arms hang slightly forward, which meant his balance was front-loaded. The way his hands, those ridiculous hands, stayed open instead of fisted, which meant he fought with grabs, not strikes. A grabber is the worst kind of fighter when you're my size, because once those hands close on you, technique stops mattering. Physics takes over. Mass times acceleration. And his mass was roughly 3 of me. He saw me coming down the corridor. He looked at the scalpel in my hand and at the 2 men on the floor behind me, and his face didn't change. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't call for help. He widened his stance, bent his knees slightly, and put those hands out to the sides like a man opening his arms for a hug. I went in low and fast, aiming for the right knee, the one I'd seen him favoring. He caught me before I got there, 1 hand on my throat, the other on my arm, the one holding the scalpel. He lifted me off the floor the way you lift a child who's reached for something on a high shelf. Casually, without effort. My spine hit the wall. The ribs the gin had just stabilized cracked again. I heard them go, a sound like stepping on a bag of sticks. His hand on my throat was tightening, and the ceiling was getting farther away, or I was getting closer to the floor, and neither of those things was good.
More. You need more. Open the door, Silas.
His face was close to mine. Those small eyes and that too big skull. Studying me. Not angry. Not afraid. Curious. The way you look at a roach that keeps coming back after you've stepped on it. I drove the scalpel into his forearm, the one holding my throat. Drove it into the handle, the dragon's tooth metal going through flesh and tendon and scraping against the bone underneath. He grunted. His grip didn't loosen. He just kept squeezing with a blade buried in his arm like the blade was an inconvenience and not an injury.
He's not letting go. You have seconds, Silas. Open the door, or I watch you die again and bring you back, and we do this tomorrow without surprise.
The edges of my vision were going dark, the torchlight shrinking to a tunnel, his hand on my throat like a vice, my lungs empty and not refilling. I opened the door another notch, and something came through that was different from the first inch. Colder. Older. The first inch had been potential. This was intent. Something that wanted to move through me and use my body the way I used the scalpel, as a tool to accomplish something specific. My free hand found the giant's face. My thumb found his eye, and I pushed with a strength that didn't come from my shoulder or my arm or any muscle a doctor could name. I pushed, and the giant screamed, a sound that came from somewhere deep in that too large chest, and his hand on my throat opened. I dropped. My feet hit the floor. I pulled the scalpel out of his forearm and went to work. Not finesse, damage. The kind of cutting that doesn't require precision, just access. Shoulder, armpit, inner thigh, anywhere the mail didn't cover and the blood ran close to the surface. The giant swung at me. Missed. His balance was gone now, the right knee buckling, the blood loss starting to show. He swung again, and I stepped inside the arc and put the scalpel into the meat of his thigh and felt the muscle give. He went to one knee, a sound like a tree falling. Then the other knee. Then his hands on the floor. Then just his breathing, loud and wrong and bubbling slightly. I closed the door. Back to 1 inch. The cold thing pulled back like a wave receding, and what was left was just me. Bleeding. Cracked ribs again. A throat that felt like someone had tried to wring it like a dishcloth. But standing. I took the keys from the first guard's belt, stepped over the giant, walked down the corridor toward Kassim's chamber. The torchlight from the open door making a warm rectangle on the stone floor that looked almost inviting. He was at his table, his back to the door, working on something, sharpening a small curved blade on whetstone. The sound of metal on rock, rhythmic, patient. The sound of a man who has a job tomorrow morning and is doing his preparation tonight, the way a good professional prepares. Edges first, then layout, then execution. The room smelled like iron and tallow and something sweeter underneath. Cedar oil. He oiled his instruments the way a musician oils a guitar. I'd noticed that during the sessions. The care, the tenderness he showed the tools he used to take people apart.
Stranger, the guards brought you early. I wasn't expecting you until morning. But I appreciate a man who can't wait.
Turn around. Something in my voice. He heard it. The thing underneath the words that hadn't been there in the previous sessions. The door, 1 inch open, leaking through my vocal cords the way water leaks through a crack in a dam. Not much, but enough to change the sound of a man's voice in a way that another man can hear, even with his back turned. Kassim turned. He saw the scalpel in my hand, the blood on my wrist and forearms, the corridor behind me dim, and in the dim the shapes on the floor that used to be his guards. Those beautiful eyes. I'd spent 3 days looking at him while he worked on me. Kind eyes, warm, the color of dark honey. Eyes that belonged on a man who taught children, or healed the sick, or did any of the things that kind eyes are supposed to do. They went wide, not with fear. Kassim didn't fear pain or death. He'd spent 30 years so close to both that they'd become ambient, like the smell of his cedar oil. What passed through his eyes was something closer to recognition. The look of a man who has been waiting for a specific visitor, and the visitor has finally arrived.
How? The chains were rated for a horse. I specified them myself.
You told me about the flaying frame, about Ibrahim, about the new technique. Tomorrow morning, starting at the shoulders.
Yes, I did.
That was a mistake. He looked at the scalpel, not at the blood on it, at the blade itself, at the color of the metal, which was wrong. Not silver, not steel, something darker, with a grain to it that caught the torchlight and held it.
That blade. I've never seen metal like that. The grain is wrong. Where did you get that?
Sit down, Kassim.
Are you going to kill me?
No.
No. That's worse, isn't it? Whatever you've come to do, it's worse than killing.
Yeah. He didn't run. I'd known he wouldn't. Men like Kassim don't run because running requires a kind of fear they've already burned through. He'd spent 30 years inflicting the worst things a human body can experience on other human bodies. And in that time, he'd used up all his fear, spent it like currency, traded it for the steady calm that lets a man sharpen a flaying knife at midnight while the city burns outside. He sat down on the stone floor with his back against the wall, his legs out in front of him, his hands in his lap, those soft hands. And he looked up at me with the kind eyes and the calm that wasn't peace. It was emptiness, wearing peace like a mask.
Tell me what you're going to do. Please. I want to understand it.
Of course he did. Understanding was his religion. He wanted to comprehend what was about to happen to him the way he wanted to comprehend the architecture of a scream. Not to prevent it, to appreciate it. You're going to stay in there. Behind your eyes, you'll see everything that happens in this room, and every room they put you in for the rest of your life. You'll hear every word, feel every touch, the sun on your face, the cold on your skin, water in your mouth, all of it. But you won't be able to reach any of it. Your hands won't close when you tell them to. Your voice won't come when you call it. You'll be locked inside your body the way your prisoners were locked inside this room. Except there's no key, and there's no door, and nobody will know you're still in there, because from the outside, you'll look like a man who went simple. They'll feed you, they'll sit you in a corner, they'll forget about you, and you'll be screaming the whole time, and nobody will hear it.
Solitary confinement of the soul.
Yep, that's what it is.
The blade. It can do that. It can sever the soul's connection to the body without killing either one.
The blade was made from something that came out of a wound in the world. It cuts things that aren't supposed to be cuttable. Your hands, Kassim, your soft hands, your instruments, your frame, your technique, all still there, all still inside you. And you'll remember every single thing you know how to do, and you won't be able to do any of it. You'll be a craftsman trapped inside a body that can't craft. For decades. Think about that.
I think I've been waiting for this. I think I've been waiting for someone to show me this side of the table.
I stepped forward, put one hand on his forehead. His skin was warm and dry. He didn't flinch. He closed his eyes, like a man about to receive communion. I placed a scalpel at the center of his forehead, the spot that old text in a dozen languages call different things. The third eye, the gate of the spirit, the root of intention. The place where the soul's ability to reach into the world through the body lives closest to the surface. The blade touched his skin and the metal hummed. I could feel it through the handle. A vibration. Not from my hand, from the blade itself. The dragon's tooth stone recognizing what it was pointed at, resonating with the target the way a tuning fork resonates with its matching note.
I can feel it. The metal. It's warm. It hums. What is that sound?
That's the stone remembering what it was made for. I cut. The scalpel went through skin and into something underneath that was not flesh and not bone and not any tissue a surgeon would recognize. A layer that existed between the physical and whatever was on the other side of the physical. Membrane. Taut. Resistant. Like cutting through the skin of a drum, the blade meeting tension that pushed back before it gave way. A sound. Not from Kassim, from the cut itself. A high, clear note, like a string on an instrument being cut. A single tone that rang through the stone room and then faded, the way a bell fades. Not silenced, absorbed, swallowed by the walls. Kassim's eyes opened, wide, the kind eyes. And what I saw in them was not pain. Pain was something he understood. What I saw was the beginning of understanding something he had never imagined. The sensation of a connection being severed that he didn't know he had until it started coming apart. His mouth opened. A long, slow exhale. Not a scream. Not yet. The sound a house makes when the foundation shifts and everything that was level suddenly tilts 1 degree. Barely perceptible. But everything that was sitting on every shelf in every room starts to slide. Then the scream came. It started low, not from his throat, from somewhere deeper. The sound of a man realizing in real time that the thread connecting his will to his body was being cut. He could feel it going. Not fast, not all at once. Fiber by fiber. The ability to move his hands, going. The ability to form words, going. The ability to reach out and touch and hold and hurt and create and destroy. All of it going, unraveling. Like pulling a thread from a garment and watching the weave come apart. Something came away from the blade as I drew it back. Not blood. Something thinner, darker. It rose from the cut like smoke from an extinguished candle, curling in the torchlight, carrying a smell that was old and bitter, like burned incense made from something that should never have been lit. It thinned and faded and was gone. When I pulled the scalpel free, there was no wound. The skin was unbroken, unmarked, as if the blade had never touched him. Kassim's body slid down the wall, slowly, the way a coat slides off a hook. His legs straightened. His hands settled in his lap. Those soft, beautiful, careful hands. Open, palms up, fingers slightly curled. The resting position of a body whose operator has left the controls. His eyes were open, still beautiful, still kind, still the color of dark honey in the torchlight. And behind them, fully conscious, fully aware, a man who had just felt every connection between his will and his world, severed like the strings of a puppet. He could see me. I knew he could see me. I could see him seeing me, behind the glass, pounding on it, screaming in the soundproof room that used to be his life. His mouth was open slightly, a small amount of saliva on his lower lip, his chest rising and falling with the slow, even rhythm of a body that would continue to breathe and pump blood and digest food and keep a man alive for decades inside a prison that had no walls and no bars and no key. I'd seen worse things in 1,000 years. I'd done worse things. But this was the most precise thing I'd ever done. The most surgical. A punishment that fit the crime the way a glove fits a hand. I wiped the blade on my sleeve. The metal was still warm, still humming faintly. I slid it into my waistband and walked out of the room and left Kassim sitting on the floor with his kind eyes open and his soft hands in his lap, and the rest of his life ahead of him, like a hallway with no doors. The cells. The keys from the first guard's belt. 3 keys on an iron ring. The second key worked. Ibrahim's cell first. The door swung open and he stood there in the torchlight looking at me, and then looking past me at the corridor, at the shapes on the floor, at the blood. His face went the color of old plaster and he took a step back instead of forward.
Bismillah. What did you do? What happened? The gods, are they...
Don't look at them, look at me. We're leaving. Right now.
I can't step over them. I can't.
Ibrahim, your son is outside. Yusuf is outside the wall. He has horses. He's been waiting for you all night. Look at me. Don't look at the floor. Look at me and walk where I walk. He looked at me. The healed hand pressed against his chest. The terror fighting with something else. Fatima. Yusuf. The baby. The things on the other side of the wall that mattered more than the things on this floor. He stepped out. I walked ahead. He walked where I walked. He didn't look down. Sebastian's cell, the third key. The door swung open. He walked out the way a man walks out of a room he's been studying for 18 months. No hurry, no relief. He stepped over the threshold and glanced both directions down the corridor, the way you check for traffic before crossing a street. His prison-stained velvet coat, his unmarked skin. 18 months of Kassim and not a scar on him. He looked at the corridor, at the guards on the floor, at the giant at the gate, still breathing, still conscious, staring at the ceiling with blood pooling under his legs. Sebastian looked at all of it the way you look at furniture.
Where is the engineer?
His cell is this way. Antonio's cell. The second key again. The lock turned. I pushed the door open. Empty. The chains hanging from the wall. The bucket in the corner. The crack in the stone where I'd heard him whispering through to Sebastian's cell for the past 3 days. The ghost of charcoal dust on his fingertips on the stone by the crack where he'd traced the equations he was reading. But no Antonio. Where is he?
They took him. Jafar.
I stood in the empty cell and looked at the chains on the wall. A dog in a wheelchair had carried a blade between his teeth through a guard room full of soldiers to bring me the tool I needed to get out of this place. That dog belonged to the man who should have been standing here. The man was gone. The chains were still swinging slightly from when whoever unlocked them had pulled them loose. Above us, the sounds of the palace were changing. The alarm was spreading through the upper corridors. Someone had found something. The guards, or the giant, or the blood. Shouting, boots running on stone. The organized panic of a building that has just discovered its basement has been opened. Move, now, through the garden, the grate, go. The garden, the moonlight, and the jasmine, and the faceless statues. Ibrahim went through the grate first, scraping his shoulders, whimpering when his healed hand knocked against the stone. Sebastian went through second, turning sideways, moving through the narrow gap with a fluidity that didn't match a man who'd been in a cell for a year and a half. A gate in the garden wall, iron, locked. The keyring had nothing that fit. I jammed the scalpel between the bolt and the plate and used the handle as a lever. The metal of the bolt was old, brittle. The scalpel was made from something that didn't care what it was applied to. The bolt sheared with a sound like a branch snapping, loud enough to carry, loud enough to matter. Through, into the night air. The drums from the walls louder out here, the sound bouncing off the stone buildings of the city, mixing with the horns and the shouting into a wall of noise that was almost useful. You can hide in noise. You can move in noise. Noise is cover for the things that don't want to be seen. Yusuf was there, in the shadows by the outer wall of the Alcazar, crouched, his gray tunic dirty, his dark eyes scanning the darkness the way a street kid scans darkness, not looking for safety, but cataloging threats. And beside him, Santino, the brass wheels and the brown eyes and the ears that tracked me before his head turned. Ibrahim saw Yusuf and made a sound. Not a word, the sound that comes before words, the sound a throat makes when it's too full for language. He dropped to his knees in the dirt, and the boy came to him, and Ibrahim grabbed Yusuf with both arms, both hands, the healed hand closing on the boy's shoulder with a grip that said, "I will never let go of you again." Neither of them spoke. Ibrahim's face was buried in the boy's hair, and his shoulders were shaking, and Yusuf's hands were on his father's back, holding him up and holding him together at the same time, the way children hold their parents when the parents have finally stopped pretending to be strong. I looked away, because some things are private, even in a crisis. Even when the drums are going and the city is under assault, and you've just cut the soul out of a man, and the empty cell is behind you, and the dog is looking at you with eyes that are asking a question you don't want to answer. The dog was looking at me, then at the cells behind us, then at me. No, Antonio, the dog knew. You could see the knowing settle into him like cold water, the ears dropping slightly, the body going still, the brown eyes locked on mine with a steadiness that was not hope and not accusation, but something older and simpler. A question. Where is my person? He's alive. They took him before I got there. The Sakaliba general has him. The dog looked at me, then at the palace, at the walls, at the Sakaliba barracks somewhere inside those walls, where 200 soldiers were stationed, and where Antonio was right now, sitting in a room with a man who'd tried to have him killed yesterday. The dog looked back at me and waited. Ibrahim, the Jewish quarter, get Fatima, get the baby, Southern Gate by dawn. Yusuf has horses. If I'm there, I come with you. If not, you leave without me.
I'm not going anywhere with you. You're a killer. The things in that corridor, you're the reason the soldiers came to my house. You're the reason we're in here.
Papa, listen. Can you hear the drums? The Berbers are at the gates. We can't fight. We don't know how to fight. We'll never make it to the Jewish quarter alone. Not tonight. Not through this.
Ibrahim looked at his son, the boy with the numbers in his eyes. The boy who understood the stars the way birds understand the sky. And the boy was telling him, we need the monster. We need the thing you're afraid of, because the thing outside the walls is worse. The calculation a father makes when every option is terrible, and his 12-year-old just identified the least terrible one.
The Southern Gate. Dawn. If you're late, we leave without you.
Good. Ibrahim pulled Yusuf to his feet. The boy whistled once, low, and Santino turned toward the sound. The three of them moved into the dark together, Ibrahim walking stiffly, his healed hand clenched at his side, Yusuf guiding, one hand on his father's arm. Santino between them, the brass wheels finding the cobblestones, moving at the boy's pace, heading toward the Jewish quarter, and Fatima and the baby, and whatever safety looked like in a city under siege. I watched him go. The dog looked back at me once. Those brown eyes, not angry, not pleading. Something simpler. A promise and a debt and a question all wrapped into one look from an animal that shouldn't have been able to give looks like that, but could, because the same light that changed all of us had changed him too. I turned to Sebastian.
The engineer is in the Sakaliba barracks.
Yeah.
So we're going back in.
Yeah. I stood there for a moment, looking at the palace, the walls, the torchlight behind the windows, the sound of the siege against the far walls and the sound of the alarm inside the palace mixing into a single roar that was almost like the sea, if the sea was angry and on fire. I could leave, right now, west, toward Dragon's Tooth, the shimmer, the wound in reality that I'd been looking for since before this city was built. 1,000 years of searching, and the answer was a 3-day ride west, and the road was open, and nobody was stopping me, and the hospitality debt was paid. Ibrahim was free. His family would be at the gate by dawn. Debt cleared, except the dog. The dog had carried a blade between his teeth through a guardroom of soldiers. Not for himself, for me. Because his person was in a cell, and the man in the next cell said he needed something, and the dog went and got it. No negotiation, no cost-benefit analysis, no 1,000-year calculation about curses and portals and the geometric architecture of the universe. Just, you need a thing, I'll get the thing. And the dog's person was inside those walls.
You're thinking about staying. I can feel it. The door is still open 1 inch, and I can feel you thinking about staying. And I want you to know that this is objectively the worst idea you have had in 1,000 years. And you once challenged a Mongol warlord to single combat because he insulted your horse.
The dog brought me the blade.
That's your reason. A dog. A crippled dog in a wheelchair who can't even scratch his own ears. That's why you're going to walk into 200 Sakaliba soldiers during a siege with a 4-inch scalpel and a man who's been in a cell for 18 months.
The dog's person is inside.
The shimmer is west, Silas. 3 days. The cure. The end of the curse. Everything you've wanted since before the word Portugal existed. You can feel it from here. I know you can. I can feel it through you.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Then why?
Because a dog in a wheelchair did more for me tonight than any prophecy or portal or celestial instrument has done in 1,000 years. He went into a room he was afraid of, and he brought me the only thing I needed. And he didn't ask what it was for. He didn't negotiate. He just did it. And his person is inside those walls. And if I leave, the dog's person dies in there. And the dog will know, and I'll know. And I've got 1,000 years of things I know that I wish I didn't. And I'm not adding that to the list.
You know what this will cost. 200 soldiers. You need more than 1 inch. More than 2. And the price for that is not something we negotiate after. The price for that is permanent.
And I better not waste any of it.
You have never been smart about anything in 1,000 years.
And yet here we are.
Yes, here we are. Again. In front of a building full of men who want to kill us, with inadequate weapons and no plan, and a debt to an animal. I swear, Silas, if we survive this, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about your decision-making process.
Looking forward to it. I turned toward the palace, Sebastian beside me. The drums and the horns and the shouting above us and the dog disappearing into the dark behind us and the scalpel warm against my hip. 200 soldiers, a siege, a 4-inch blade and whatever Sebastian was. I'd had worse odds. Not many times, but some. We moved.